Brant Cooper. Same day, couple minutes later.
Same bat channel.
Same gloominess.
Weather has not changed.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So I want to dig in a little bit. You and I have been to South Africa together, and I feel like, and if it's not true, just pretend like it is, that I saw you develop the 5E model. I kind of saw your thinking around it and your thought process develop around this. So if it's not true, just say it is. But then if it isn't, kind of just gently tell us how you came up with this.
Well, I think I was still with the three E's back in South Africa, and so
Okay.
since then I think I was inspired to add a couple of more.
Because
Um,
is it because my name starts with an E?
right,
Okay.
right. But
And my name also my name there are actually three E's in my name.
right, and so that got us 60% there, right? But I
I
needed a
saw
couple
you
more.
I saw you talk about the E's, the three E's. We went up to Johannesburg, we went down to Cape Town, and you did quite a few engagements, blew the minds of the entrepreneurial South Africa. But it was awesome to see. So the E's made it into your new book, Disruption Proof.
Yes.
So what I would love to do now is hear you tell me why you wrote this book, Disruption Proof. It's a great name. Uh, Only because I've heard phrases like future proofing. I've heard phrases like, we're going to disrupt this industry, man. So I feel like because you're that guy, you probably picked words that needed to be spoken to. So tell me why you wrote the book, and then I want to dig into a couple of the E's in your framework.
Yeah, the book project started way before the pandemic, but it's pretty hard to do anything last year without the pandemic becoming, uh, you know, first and foremost. And what I found was that, at least in my thinking, that the pandemic was accelerating disruption that was going on a bigger, more massive scale. And you can just look at, what was going on with, say, Zoom or remote work. These things that were all trends beforehand suddenly becoming, more commonplace. And so I think that, in my view, people were conflating the pandemic with disruption, and I wanted to sort of point out that there was this bigger, massive disruption that was going on, which is the move from the industrial age to the digital age, and that fundamentally, I think the structure, the way we manage people, processes are fundamentally changing in government, education, business, all across the society, uh, because we are running around with computers in our pockets that are massively more powerful than the very first computers that were room sized back in the 50s. I mean, that's actually kind of an extraordinary thought all by itself, is that this computer is massively more powerful than the room sized, ENIAC computer that was in the 50s. And so the 20th century was dominated by command and control, hierarchical management of science type of mentality that was really geared around the assembly line. The assembly line is the perfect way to imagine what 20th century industrial age management looked like. Well, our world doesn't look anything like the assembly line anymore, and so new management and new structure and new everything is going to evolve now in society, because the very fundamental basis of technology is different than what was before. It's all digital now. The speed of information, the interconnectedness of the world and of all of us, uh, is just extraordinary. And so that was foremost at the the reason why I was writing the book. And then, the pandemic ends up being just one thing that has disrupted our lives in a tremendous way over the last year. But if you look at the entire year, it's really even more extraordinary than that. You have the Black Lives Matter. You have energy grid collapse in Texas that a bunch of people are killed and put out of work and can't eat. And, I mean, just extraordinary. And you've got a ship getting stuck in a canal that upsets global supply chains. You've got insurrection. You've got a crazy election. I mean, all of these things are disrupting either our lives or certainly a portion of our lives. And this stuff is going on globally. And so I think that part of this interconnected, complex world that we live in has made us super fragile, and that we need to get out in front of reorganizing our systems so that we can weather these storms better, so that we can uh, handle these, what I think are endless disruptions. I think that these type of disruptions are going to happen now on a regular basis. And so everybody's like, we're gotta get, we gotta rush back to normal, whatever that is. And I don't think that there's any such thing. This is just the new world. And so we have to look at the way that we're building things in order to make them more disruption proof.
And then, of course, the pandemic shows up, and boy, did that drive the point home.
All the trends that were happening beforehand were accelerated during the pandemic.
I
And
saw
so
today Apple employees sort of not
I saw
wanting to
that
go
too.
back. They don't want to go back to the spaceship.
Well, I mean, it's just
Amazing.
what's amazing to me is that in one of the most advanced tech companies in the world, you've got a management structure that sits there and goes, nope, no remote work. I mean, just like, and that's how they deal with it. Centralized, hierarchical, command and control. And what's extraordinarily different is that the employees fight back, right? And they're all like, yeah, not so easy. And
Yeah.
it's becoming more difficult to hire engineers if you do not get engineers the ability to remote work at least some of the time. And it's amazing how much power software engineers have. And so I think it's extraordinary that Apple represents that old school top down management hierarchical decision making, as opposed to, and I've got a couple of videos coming out in the next couple of weeks about remote work in general. Uh, what a serious lapse in how in how companies should be dealing with even this um, complexity of remote work.
What do you just on that briefly, what do you say to the people who talk about the serendipity of crossing each other in the hallway and the impromptu overheard conversations where you can
I
ideate
agree with
and
all that.
jump into a conference room?
I agree with all that. I just the answer isn't binary. It's not remote only, and it's not office only, and it's not the ridiculous hybrid approach that these companies come up with, which is arbitrarily choosing 2 days of the week. Mondays and Fridays are also can be work from home. I mean, it's just so dumb. And even the employees in their their response to Apple get it right. They say, no, it should be up to the teams. And it gets back to this idea of teams being the new unit of work. You know, it's just unfathomably dumb to me to think that I'm going to force a team of maybe 7 to 10 people all have to drive in to this centralized office, an hour commute, sitting in traffic, because that's the rule, when all of them could have said, well, let's just go to this co-working spot that's here, and next week, we can do it
Yeah.
closer to you,
Yeah. Nothing
Maria.
nothing nothing stops them from still getting together and having manufacturing serendipity, but on their own terms. I looked at my closet the other day, and I was like, "This is I have the most neglected, janky closet I've had in years because I haven't gotten dressed to go anywhere.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
was
Well,
thinking, as we're starting to travel again and starting to see people, I'm thinking, wow, I need new clothes.
yeah, Levi's is having
Maybe
some sales, I think. You should check them out.
okay, maybe that was a bit of an asterisk to this conversation. No, I love that.
What's
So
funny to me about that, yeah, what's funny to me about that, Etienne, is that these management are acting as if they were actually actively engaged in ensuring their people were engaged, collaborating, making progress on their work when everybody comes to the office. And listen, whenever I went into the office, I never saw my bosses. They were in meetings literally all day, every day. So suddenly, these leaders are all concerned about whether their people are engaged and collaborating because they're actually working from home. They don't manage that stuff when the people come into work. It's this feeling of comfort. It gets back to what we talked about a little bit last time, this feeling of trust that if I see them in the office, then I can make
true.
this assumption that they're doing their work. But you know what they're doing? They're surfing, they're watching, the French Open, they're, talking in the coffee room, they're like, I mean, it's just so much BS, and it's so simplistic to
So
think
true,
that
yeah.
if they're in their office and I can see them, ergo it means everything is rosy. It's just dumb.
And I wonder if that is the classic managing others like you manage yourself. So maybe when you start
Mm.
going up to the managerial levels and you're in meetings all the time and you're always talking and it's just from one meeting to the next, maybe you're thinking, well, I manage myself by being in the hallway with my other managers. And so I want my people who do not want to be interrupted. They want to be in the flow. They want to wear their headphones. They want to be left alone. And yet we're like, no, you, like you said, it's the way you described it just makes it sound laughable that because you showed up. I remember as a startup, my CEO had a huge problem with my developers not showing, coming in late to the office. I'm like, how on earth are we going to define late, brother?
Yep.
LATE is a four-letter word that means nothing to a developer.
The very first job I had, which was a long, long time ago, very first post college job I had, I used to show up at 7:30 and leave at 4:30, and the amount of chatter that would go on because I was walking out of the office 30 minutes early was incredible, incredible.
Yeah, I bucked the system by leaving early on Friday afternoons. And I actually advocated for not going into the office on Fridays, and that was a great idea, but it was way too early for its time. This was in the early 2000s. Then I said, well, I'm telling you, I'm not going to come back to the office after I've gone to lunch on Friday. And
Matter of fact, I'm
that
going
was
to
also,
a pub, and that's like, and it's all over.
I'm gonna hang, I'm gonna relax.
Yeah.
And then you need to start quantifying, well, when you chile out for work at 6:30, I was still in and then you're in such a petty conversation, it's ridiculous. So I get that.
Well, what's funny to me
It
about
is
all of that,
hilarious.
well, I was just going to say, what's funny to me about all of that is the 8 hour workday and the 40-hour work week is completely arbitrary anyway. This is not like scientific management. Like we figured out that 40 hours in the office is the optimal level of performance. It's completely 100% arbitrary.
And we're very good as humans to fill up those spaces.
Totally. I really wonder what the amount of actual productivity time is happening in the office on an 8 hour day.
Probably 66 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm going to say maybe 70 minutes.
Human beings just aren't wired to be that focused for that long
No.
anyway.
No, and it's I think the my takeaway from this conversation is the the centralized view, like you said, that if you're not in the office, I cannot manage you. It just raises the bar for intentionality, right? So the amount of conversations we've even had as CTOs in 7 CTOs around just helping remote teams get through their work week, the mental well-being of people, um, there's had to be a massive shift because you can't make a whole set of assumptions anymore. But just because you made those assumptions doesn't mean that you were a good manager or a good leader. It actually exposes the fact that there was convenience, there was complacency, and what remote work has done is it's put all the managers on notice. Like, listen, there's there's a different way that you need to show up in managing your people now, and that is with way more intentionality around their personal well-being, around their productivity, around their being absent from Slack. Like
Yeah,
it's just a whole new space.
I agree with that. I mean, I think that if the pandemic, it's just another thing that the pandemic drove home is that people are having and have been having for a long time difficulty balancing all of the things that they need to balance in order to be, contented, productive people. And this is not, live work balance where we split up the day between, home and work. It's allowing people to organize their lives so that they can have a healthy relationship with their partner and they can have a healthy relationship with their children and they can take care of their parents if they need to and they can take care of their own spirituality if they need
Yeah.
to, and their own
Yeah.
health. I mean, there's all of these elements that we know go into being a productive, contented person. And all of the studies have shown that that increases the productivity of people when they are working. Um, and so we're hanging on to this old school uh, mentality for, I don't know why. It's just because we've always done it.
Yeah, and
So go ahead.
that's what is facing hiring managers now in companies is how to be competitive amongst other employers. And and I'm imagining insisting that someone goes into an office is no longer it, it's a competitive disadvantage for that person deciding between which opportunities they're going to pursue.
Yep. Yep. Well, I mean, I hope that holds true. Um, the we were going to talk about the 5 E's, and the first E there is empathy, and and uh, and I think most organizations now understand how that's important in understanding customers when you're developing products and marketing and all the rest. But the other major component of that is having empathy inside your company. And so, what's getting lost, in my opinion, in all of these discussions around remote versus in the office is getting empathy for both the leaders and the employees about, well, what are the actual needs here? Why is it that you want to be remote? Why is it that you don't want to be remote? Does it mean that you don't want to ever come in? I mean, what understanding understanding your people, and again, it means leaders as well as the employees, doesn't mean that that doesn't dictate the policy, right? You could sit there and interview all of your employees, and 90% of them want to work from home, and you still implement a office only policy. It's up to you, but you just need to understand what the ramifications of your policies are. And you also might learn other things that can be ameliorated with other policies. And so what if everybody just came in at 10 instead of at, 8 or 8:30 or not? I mean, I don't know. There's just simple ways that if you learned why, you would be able to implement policies that actually positively affected your employees. But it just seems like even in this example, nobody's stopping to learn why people are asking for what they're asking for. And it's just a huge missed opportunity to apply empathy inside the business to improve, quality of your company, quality of your life, quality of your people's lives.
Yeah, and I think the to that point, and maybe to cap that, is Tim Cook's email stated that he misses running into people and being around people. And so, because he's the CEO of the world, he's
Right.
like, well, I'm assuming that you all miss being around us, and that's where the empathy was sort of a little out the door there.
That's pretty funny.
If we let's talk about the E's. So they are in service to what, and then let's run through them.
So they are in service to creating an organization that's disruption proof. So uh, to me, the biggest, what disruption brings, what the new world brings, what the digital revolution brings, is an increase in complexity in the world and these endless interruptions or disruptions that can occur that come out of the blue. We kind of know that they might happen, and we can prepare from them in a certain degree, security and disaster recovery and all those, but we don't know when they're going to happen. We don't know how huge they're going to be. We don't know how disruptive they're going to be. So if that's the new world, what we need to do is change mindset and change behavior all across the organization, from the front line to the C-suite, every department. And these behaviors are represented by these 5 E's or 5 elements. And so they are empathy, exploration, evidence-based decision making, equilibrium, and ethics. And so,
Love it. So let's
yeah,
start at the top. So we kind of just addressed empathy,
right.
um, but let's just the one line summary. Empathy in the disruption proof model means
So empathy means understanding customers, stakeholders, each other, and colleagues deeply. It's understanding uh, desires, needs, motivations, aspirations. It's understanding, sort of the deeper levels about both customers and colleagues. And again, it doesn't mean doing what they say. It just means understanding why they say what they say.
got it. Okay, so then the next one was
The next one is exploration.
exploration.
Right. And so exploration is something that you alluded to earlier, sort of this learning mode. So exploration might include, sort of design thinking, human-centered design practices, running experiments, rapid experimentation, anything that we do in order to go and, we're facing uncertainty, we're looking at the unknown. How do I actually move these items that are in the unknown bucket over into the known bucket? So it's having a learning mentality.
Got it. And
So then
then
the
we have
next E is evidence. And so this is sort of, how do we cut through our own personal biases? How do we overcome disagreements? How do we come together, to build consensus? And it's being willing to look at the data. And so it's a good practice to define what data you're going to look at before you say go run an experiment, and then we agree to formulate whatever policies or decisions based upon the data that comes back. Um, so evidence can come from expertise, it can come from empathy work, it can come from experiments, it can come from research, but it's a commitment to using the evidence to inform our decisions in a way that hopefully cuts through our biases. It's not the data doesn't make the decisions. We still have our own other things that we have to balance. And I'm one that believes in intuition and believes that people's expertise and knowing, sort of that knowing what's right. I think that those are okay things to weigh, but it should be weighed, with the evidence.
got it. I love that. And as you're talking, I'm kind of formulating this as to how it empowers people on the edge.
Right. Gets back to that, the evidence
Yeah,
for the ideas, right? So,
yeah,
so the next E is equilibrium. And equilibrium, again, it sort of means a couple of different things, a couple of different areas. Equilibrium primarily is this idea of balancing everywhere inside your organization. You have to balance the execution work that has to be done with some amount of exploration work. And so if you've got that product development that's going on and you absolutely know what needs to be built, then you've got an engineering team there, an agile team that is execution focused. They're still, however, just using, kind of the scientific method or the iterative approach. They're actually doing exploration work there. They're writing code, they're testing it. When it doesn't work, they're iterating, right? So that's sort of an example of exploration mode. If you're on a sales team and you're working with a relatively new product or a new customer market segment or something, you have to update your selling scripts or whatever. There's a little bit of learning mode that's even in that execution. And so there's a balance there. Primarily execution work, a little bit of exploration. If you're over in, R&D that's looking out at new technology, that's going to come to life 10 years from now, or you're in the innovation group and you're spinning up an internal startup, there's massive amounts of uncertainty. And so most of what you're doing is sort of this learning mode. But the moment you learn something, you actually start executing on whatever you've learned. And so there's the balance on the other way. And all across the organization, it's a continuum where people need to balance differently this execution work with the exploration work. The other part where that word works, equilibrium, is getting back to that balance that we know human beings need in their lives to be contented, productive human beings. And I believe it's managers and leaders and companies' responsibility to give their employees the space for them to work on that equilibrium,
Mm,
and I
mm.
think it will improve productivity. Um,
Yeah,
and so,
that is so good, because when I think of equilibrium, again, it's something that I think it can be trained at the most at the lowest level. You
yes,
can even set sort of an equilibrium percentage if you want to get all nerdy about it. But I feel like all these E's so far are trainable right up to the edge, so that people are empowered to make their own decisions, as long as these things are kept in mind.
yeah, I totally agree. Again, it's why I'm a huge fan of some of the agile practices, because you can build the equilibrium right into the sprints. You can just say there's a rule that every sprint or every other sprint, we have to take from our backlog this learning mode. We're going to do a day of empathy work, or we're going to run, set up a new experiment, and that just flows into the sprint planning. Is depending upon what percentage needs to be learning mode. So I think a lot of these agile practices are perfect for that sort of thing. The final E then is ethics, and I think that this is a tough one for a lot of organizations. They set their corporate values, and I think most people believe in their values, but they have a really hard time weighing individuals' behavior against those values. And there's all sorts of research. I think Dan Ariely has written about this sort of thing, that without sort of the supervision, without the being called on particular behavior, the power for human beings to rationalize what they just did is super. It's like a superhuman power, right? Is this ability to rationalize. And so I think that what we need to do is define expected behaviors, again, down on this edge level that you're talking about, um, so that people understand what the boundaries are for their behaviors. And in this House subcommittee on antitrust, um, there was just an incredible document. Actually, there's this quote from this Facebook, or maybe it was a former Facebook engineer, where basically this person was saying is that uh, all my management cared about was getting another 30 seconds of engagement time, and they didn't care how we did it, and there was no ethics of it. It actually ran counter to the corporate values, but we were only measured on increasing engagement. And you can just see that is leads to unethical behavior. And so I think that here again, in my view, agile offers an opportunity where giving a team a mission, you can actually ascribe ethics and values right at that team level. And in the end, the social construct of a team is one of the most powerful aspects of maintaining culture and of maintaining values. Is if you have people on those teams that are willing to say, no, we can't do that, that goes against the ethical principles that are defined here in our mission, then that's almost all you need to reinforce that. And it ends up being a self-reinforcing culture that starts, from the grassroots and works its way back up. And so I think that's it goes right along with empowering the edge to exhibit those behaviors that you need to exhibit.
Yeah, I love that, Brant. Good stuff. I think those 5 E's definitely contributes in my mind where we started with this conversation in building autonomous employees, autonomous humans to, first of all, continuously foster empathy. What are we trying to do? Who are we trying to help? How are we changing lives, not only outside the company, inside the company? What can we do to have empathy-driven ideas and innovation? But then landing it into that exploration phase where, okay, you can now from that mindset, you're able to say, I'm going to try this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to explore. So they're
Right.
empowered to explore, and then there's like, okay, you've explored, but now let's root that in evidence so that this is a productive conversation. We're not
Exploring for
comparing.
exploring's sake, right? It's not just an
Yeah,
endless
yeah.
exploration,
It's
right?
it's it's exploration. It's exploration for the sake of empathic communication. Like, hey, how's this going to land with people who are busy, people who have 1,000 things on their plate? Like, how can I make it easier to palate, or how can I make it something that draws people in? And that is going to be, listen, it's not just because I had the idea, but I went through the exploration phase. I took the time preemptively, in secret, behind the scenes, whatever, to work more to provide evidence, and hopefully the evidence um, confirms, the exploration. Clearly, if it doesn't, then great, you had a great, rich conversation with yourself in your head. And then that whole equilibrium of empowering sort of the team or empowering departments to say, listen, if there's full certainty, then we know what needs to be done, and the equilibrium swings a lot more to operational efficiency,
That's right.
time to market, and all that kind of stuff. If it's on the other side, then it's like, hey, we're not going to try and manage you, R&D team, or what did you call that? A squad or something. We're going to manage you to enrich those ideas, and then you freaking bring the hammer down with ethics. It's like, listen, we we do things a certain way. There's ethical considerations in everything we do. I mean, I really think that that's a very, very solid pentagon, pen, pen,
Pentagon,
pentagram,
pentagram.
penta something, penta.
It's pentagram like Instagram, but it just takes 5 seconds or something.
So thank you. That was great.
No, you're welcome, Etienne. It's a nice summary.
Yeah, it was really landed for me, especially since we started with this. This whole concept of ideas are everywhere, but this to me is a coachable framework that you can coach any and every employee on to be able to start pushing forward the competitiveness of the company, and And
So, yeah,
that's
so I think
that's
I think that's a super important point too, because I think that this is not just for new products, right? This is for improving internal processes. This is for the HR department that is thinking about launching something new internally, right? They're going to revamp how reviews are done, or whatever. It's IT that's wanting to up their service game to all of their internal employees. It could even be, we've done a workshop where design team, couldn't wasn't working well with the manufacturing team that was there in the same building, and you can use those same 5 E's to help those two groups get together and work together better. So it's really wherever there's uncertainty, wherever there's sort of an issue or something that can improve the company just from an efficiency point of view, right? So it's not just product or revenue focused or market. It can be applied anywhere and everywhere.
absolutely. And then again with the aim of attracting talent, extracting gorgeous ideas, and building that sustainable future for the organization. That that model completely for me is a trainable, coachable model. So I love it. Good. Well, I think that was a great sesh.
As always.
Okay, brother. We'll all be cheering on the book, and hopefully you'll be speaking at our 0111 conference, and books can be flung into the audience.
Well, yeah, I look forward to that, Etienne. So I it's marked on my calendar, man.
Yes. Okay, brother. Thanks a lot, man.
Thank
See
you.
you soon.
All
Bye.
right. See you.